We are very excited and happy to see all of your faces, those of you that are on camera. All right, so we will get started. We're anticipating more folks who will join us, but we're gonna get started. Welcome, as I said, and good afternoon. My name is Asandi Connor. I'll tell you who I am in a moment, but thank you for joining us. As I said, this is our first deal application info session, the first of what we hope will be many more to come. And before we dig into the information that we're going to share with you, we're going to start with how we begin our monthly sessions, which is with a land and ancestor acknowledgement.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aisha Jamali. I use she and her pronouns. I'm a South Asian Muslim woman. I'm wearing a teal patterned headscarf and gold framed glasses, and I'm sitting in front of a tall bookcase and a window, and I'm going to read the land and ancestor acknowledgement. We begin by acknowledging and uplifting the history and present of Detroit as Anishinaabe, the people of the Three Fires, Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi. Detroit is the largest majority Black city in the nation with a long legacy of African diasporic global contributions, which was once the last stop on the Underground Railroad, known by its code name, Midnight. Detroit is also neighbor to the US city with the largest concentration of Arab Americans, a border city with historic and growing Latinx communities, and a legacy of Asian American communities and movements. We acknowledge this land, its history, and all the beings seen and unseen, known and unknown, as we step into our work on this land, most of us as uninvited guests. We offer this work in the spirit of reparation, devoting ourselves to justice as we strive to uplift the legacy of this land. We ask that if you would like to acknowledge the land of where you are currently, place the name in the comments.
Thank you, Aisha. We have a full agenda this afternoon. We will begin with introductions, followed by history and legacy of DEAL and the Damon J. Keefe Center. We'll talk about what DEAL is. We will share our definition of racial equity. We will talk about our impact goal, followed by the fellowship. What is the fellowship? What is this opportunity all about? We will talk about who can apply and eligibility and why you ought to apply. And we presume because you are here that you are ecstatic and eager to learn more. We'll do a review of the application process and timeline, also do our FAQs and hold space for any questions that you all may have that we did not answer. That's our agenda today. We anticipate that it may be about 40 minutes. And then there'll be plenty of time for questions at the end. So I want to begin with introductions. Namira Islam Anani is joining us this afternoon, and she is a DEAL 3 alum, as well as a member of our DEAL design team. My name is Asandi Connor, and I serve as the director. And I identify, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I identify as a Black woman. I am also wearing glasses like Aisha. Mine are a tortoise pink color. I am sitting in front of a gray curtain, and I am wearing a brown and Black multicolored top. My hair is long, wavy locks, and I have on gold jewelry. Also joining us is Darielle Goodwin. She's our community engagement and event coordinator. And after I speak, you'll hear from Peter Hammer, who is the director of the Damon J. Keefe Center for Civil Rights, and also an A. Alfred Taubman Professor of Law. And then finally, you just heard from Aisha Jamali. She is our communications specialist. Other members of our team who are not present today is our fellowship program manager, Rihanna Chester Bay, and Shane Bernardo, who is a DEAL 2 alum and also a member of the design team. Peter.
So thank you, Asandi, and I want to just say how excited we are to have everybody come here and welcome you into this space. My name is Peter. I teach at the law school and direct the Damon J. Keith Center for Civil Rights. I'm more formal today. I've got a dress shirt and a red tie and kind of wire rim glasses that are not nearly as fancy or as fashionable as the other glasses that you'll see on the screen. I'm sitting in my office with a bookshelf behind me and some very industrial type tiles on the ceiling. But happy to be here. And I want to talk just briefly about the Keith Center. You can't talk about the Keith Center without first talking about Judge Damon J. Keith. And the judge passed sadly 3 years ago at the age of 96. Just an amazing human being, in addition to being an amazing jurist. I would say probably for the last 50 years was one of the most respected citizens in Detroit, but also one of the most impactful federal judges that this country has ever had. Judge Keith, over the course of his career, which was more than 50 years, appointed by Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1967, hired more women clerks and clerks of color than any other judge in American history. And there's this amazing sort of Keith clerk family that is out there still doing wonderful work in the judge's legacy. And at the Keith Center, we try to carry on that legacy, but we try to think about how does that affect the issues that we want to address today. So I sometimes tell my law students to know what Judge Keith did, but also ask themselves, what would Judge Keith do now? And that might be something that the folks here might be thinking about. At the Keith Center, we view spatial structural racism as our generation's primary civil rights challenge. And we define structural racism as the interinstitutional dynamics. And that's just a fancy way of saying, how does housing affect health, affect employment, affect education, affect transportation? So how does that institutional dynamics produce and reproduce racially disparate outcomes over time? Disparate outcomes such as disparities in wealth, right? Disparities in health, disparities in opportunity. And then we develop a collective analysis, which has been done in conjunction with earlier Deal Fellow cohorts, and then apply that analysis to the issues that affect the city today, whether that's water shutoffs or emergency management, to the state of schools or tax foreclosures, and try to then, imagine how do we start to interrupt those processes of spatial structural racism? How do we start to get more opportunity for the citizens of Detroit, and how do we imagine reconciliation at a regional level? Right. At the Keith Center, we sometimes talk about sort of the pillars of knowledge, narrative, and network. The knowledge is really that component I was just addressing. How do we better understand things, right? How do we know the history, where it came from? How can we assess the impact that it's having today? And there's constantly this co-construction of knowledge, because knowledge doesn't exist in the abstract, and knowledge needs to be informed with complicated issues from the diverse life experiences that our whole community brings to bear. And we need to honor and respect the multiple sources of knowledge. The network is really where the deal comes in, right? The sort of pre-existing network of people doing racial equity work in the city. But how can we help catalyze that network? How can we get the nodes of that network stronger? How do we build fellowship? How do we build trust? How do we build the capacity for collaborative work? And the DEAL program is very much directed toward those types of objectives. And then there's the pillar of narrative, which says that the best way to educate people and to change minds is to tell stories, right? To tell true stories about the lives of people who are impacted by racism. So we have a Martina Guzman, a racial equity media fellow. We have a race and justice reporting initiative, and we're spinning out a new Detroit democracy project. So lots happening at the Keith Center. The DEAL program is our most important connections to community, and it keeps us grounded, right? So your job are part of our accountability partners over time, as well as our sources of knowledge and partnership and trust and friendship. So that's what the DEAL is, and the other folks will give you a whole lot more details. But again, thank you for coming, and we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Peter. I will talk a little bit more about what the DEAL is. And I want to start with our mission. We develop leaders who work to end structural racism. This is our mission. This is what we show up to do every day within the DEAL program as on the staff and the design team. And we do this through our Racial Equity Fellowship Program, which is why you all are here. And together we bring you all from your the individuals, your organizations, working across many different dimensions of racial equity to start with a shared analysis of structural racism and white supremacy, and to build a toolkit for creating equitable alternatives, both personally and within your organizations. Rooted and at the center of this to inform the work that we do is our definition of racial equity. Racial equity is trending, and I realized that I did not pause at the start of this session to really take a moment to acknowledge and honor the lives that were lost in Buffalo from the tragic racist murders that happened there. So I want to, while not at the onset of this presentation, just want to pause right now to acknowledge that. We as a fellowship program understand the trauma that historically has happened and continues to be perpetuated across this country. So we just want to acknowledge what happened and extend our heartfelt sympathies. So we realized that for us, with all of the conversations about racial equity that have been happening, that we needed to, and the various definitions that exist, that we needed to have our own definition that really guided and informed the work that we do. And so we came up with this definition, which was finalized, I believe, last year, and I'll share that with you. Racial equity centers the humanity and dignity of all people, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color. It begins with acknowledging those historically and systemically harmed by a racial hierarchy that perpetuates white supremacy and anti-Blackness. It demands that our communities have the power to replace policies, institutions, and culture with a collective commitment toward co-liberation. You'll hear a little bit more about co-liberation a little bit later in this presentation. Our impact goal. We equip leaders with the tools to disrupt racism and create equitable alternatives in the policies, institutions, and culture in Detroit, but I would also add here in the Metro Detroit area as well. While our focus is Detroit, we also want to have a broader impact across the metropolitan area. And then next, Namira is going to talk about the fellowship.
Thanks, Asandi. Peace, everyone. My name is Namira Slamanani, she, her pronouns. I am also sitting in front of bookcases, also wearing glasses today. We're kind of a berry colored scarf, pinkish purple scarf. I also have some kind of Islamic calligraphy on some of the paintings behind me as well, wearing a denim shirt. So it's really great to be joining you all today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the fellowship process, having gone through it, and then also sitting on the design team and kind of, co-creating space with our fellows for the past few fellowship programs. So the program structure itself, we meet monthly. This year, we'll be thinking a little bit more about a hybrid kind of approach as we're reopening spaces and all of that. But really, the fellowship experience is a place where we really slow down, right? We slow down, we get to explore our own kind of histories, our legacies, the migration stories, all of the things that have brought us into the space together. And from there, we really then focus on kind of the self-to-systems approach, right? Thinking about individuals and then also thinking about the larger structures, the larger histories, larger political events, things that have shaped our lineage as well as our own experiences, and especially grounding that in Detroit, right? And so with this fellowship program, we are meeting once a month for 12 months. We go through this arc of learning that I'll talk about on another slide. And we're going to talk a little bit about expectations and commitments. So I'll name some of the things that we found supportive for people's fellowship experiences in the past. And then, as Asani mentioned, we'll have some time for questions, Q&A at the end. So again, a 12-month fellowship program, it is a large chunk of time, right? And we found that it really helps to have this time together because we want to slow down. We want to be really present with each other. We don't want to rush our time together, right? And so we meet on the second Thursday of the month. So as you're going through this application process, definitely take a look to see when what your schedule looks like, right? Because it's really important that people are there as much as possible at the monthly sessions because we build on the sessions as we go through the process. There are a handful of sessions like the orientation session, as well as a couple other ones that are 2 days. And so, especially with orientation, by the time you get to do introductions and really think about some of the framing and the grounding for the fellowship program, we still need another day. We also introduced something called optional sessions last year, which was an opportunity for people to continue to do a deep dive. And so we know through the process of the fellowship, some topics might just resonate with you more for some reason. And with the optional sessions, it's been a mix of just, unstructured time to talk about something, diving into something that may be like a current event or something that just needs a little bit more care and attention. Sometimes we've had guest speakers come in to dive into a topic for a little bit longer of a time. And so especially for Deal 7, this hybrid kind of space will have virtual sessions and then some in-person sessions as well. Deal used to be all in person, and then with the pandemic, we've had to switch, but there's some benefits around accessibility, right, with being virtual as well. And so that's something that we've been balancing in terms of how long we meet on the Thursdays in order to kind of deal with Zoom fatigue and the fact that just being on a screen all day long is hard, right? The cohort size, approximately 30 fellows. We have historically really attempted to make sure that the fellowship demographics are mirroring the demographics of Detroit. So Black Majority Fellowship, making sure that we're really paying attention to who's in the cohort. So like I mentioned earlier, it's about co-creating space. So all of you as fellows, right? Like you're there for a reason. And there's a serendipity to when we come together. And so some of the curriculum arc and themes, like what is this really designed to do, right, for this fellowship experience? So we really focus in on identity. We start there, and especially tied to this idea of politicized and racialized identity. So last year, for example, we unpacked terms like people of color or women of color, BIPOC, right? Some of these terms around what is a politicized identity, how are people racialized into these categories, and tied to that, what are our own individual, personal, and ancestral connections to liberation. So this theory on co-liberation, Tawana Petty has been on the design team. A lot of her work, we bring her in to talk about collaboration. So really thinking about each person's connection to this liberation struggle based on personal identity. We dive into white supremacy culture, thinking about structural racism, thinking about anti-Black racism, both an understanding of it and an analysis of the structure, recognizing that so many, I know for myself, when I was a fellow, I was, working 70 to 80 hours a week, unpaid for a lot of it, doing racial equity work, and didn't always have time to like really step back and take a look at an analysis of the structures that we're in, getting to connect with other people who are also working in similar fields, making sure that we're also looking at white supremacy culture, right? How are we replicating some of these norms within our own spaces? And lastly, really thinking about the social change ecosystem. So a lot of us have been called to kind of be on the front lines of movement struggles, of organizing, and our gifts and our roles that might not be where the energy wants to be, right? That might not be where our strengths are. We've been called to do it. So how are we teasing out those nuances between what are our gifts, what are the roles we've been playing, where do we want to go next now that we've done this dive, right, into our identities, into structure, into analysis. So we really take it through a very much individualized leadership development space that may look a little different than some of the other fellowship spaces that you've been in. And so I'm happy, to answer some more questions about that. But some of the expectations and the commitments, I wanted to touch on that and then, leave time for any questions. we do expect people to be really present at orientation and monthly sessions. So for example, if we're on Zoom, to not be trying to also answer emails. And part of the reason for this is, one, we're touching some really heavy stuff, right? A lot of stories come up around people's ancestors, around their own experiences. So we really want to be present. We want to give that grace, compassion, just presence to others. And it's been really wonderful and amazing to see others hold that space for each of us as well. With that, just a willingness to engage in reflection and self-assessment and to act for change on these different levels, right? Thinking about the individual level, but then also the organizational and community levels. We've seen changes that have happened in people's organizations. We've also seen changes that have happened within the community here in Detroit based on stuff that is coming out of Deal, right? We're committing to co-creating a culture of dialogue that supports difficult conversations about racism and about accountability. So part of the beauty of the space being multiracial is we're really carefully looking at identity and cross-cultural kind of community, thinking about liberation. Where does it fall apart, right? How can we hold ourselves and others accountable for it, especially for those of us who are non-Black, right? Whether we're people of color or we're white. So thinking about how are we co-creating that culture together. And also just, we expect that there's a trust and respect for the expertise of the staff and the design team. Because we're focusing on white supremacy culture, we intentionally do some things that might make you uncomfortable. An example I could give you, the first session, we experimented with not having people introduce what organization they're from, which, given how often you're in a nonprofit space and it's just like, oh yeah, and I play this role at this organization. It's so much of our identity, right? But to intentionally move us away from that a little bit, getting into some of the other aspects of identity outside of kind of this very capitalist nature of this is my career, so this is all I am, right? That's something that we intentionally do. And so just really trusting the process a little bit. We also expect a willingness to learn and experiment with new skills. So we often will say this is part of that lab aspect of the Detroit Equity Action Lab, right? That there's going to be new skills, there's going to be collaboration with other Deal fellows through both affinity group or caucus work, as well as on racial equity projects beyond the fellowship year. I know in the time that since I've been a Deal fellow, I've hosted conferences, attended kind of convenings with other individuals that have been either part of my Deal year or part of other Deal cohorts. There have been projects that people have collaborated on, people that they haven't worked with before, that once they met them through Deal, they were able to work with them. A lot of referrals as well that happen because of the network. So especially with Deal 7, you'd be coming in with this time where there's all these other fellows that have also been part of the Deal kind of community, right? With that, we want, a willingness to share your expertise, perspectives, and other resources to strengthen others in the network. So really being, having that willingness is important because you're co-creating the space. So, what are you offering? What can you really, this theory of interdependence, right? That we're all in this together and we're all thinking about how to support each other. We are also expecting for people to be open to engaging in Deal activities between sessions and then staying connected beyond the fellowship year. And we often leave this up to each individual cohort to decide how they want to do this, but especially as things are coming back in person, in the past, we've gone out to Belle Isle and, had our worksheet for an affinity group conversation. We sat under a tree and looked at the water and had these conversations, or we hit up a coffee shop or went to Dearborn or went to a restaurant, different things that we've done. The Black Caucus I know has gone to Sadie Saar, one of the previous Deal fellows, her dance class, right? There's other things that have happened that we expect you to come into that as well. And then tied to that, taking advantage of opportunities to build relationships with Deal alums. So other alums who are in the space, we're doing work, just taking the opportunity. You may already know many of them. So that's part of the expectations and commitments.
Thank you, Namira.
I can talk about the attendance. Do you want me to talk about the attendance, Asani?
Yes, please.
Okay, so for attendance, this has come up because, you might have a conflict. One of these Thursdays might not work for you for some reason. Of course, we want to be mindful of that. Absences, late arrivals, just let us know, right? That's really been where we've settled on this, because And especially with Zoom, like there are days people are under immense amounts of stress, right? So we know that you might be late, you might be having a day, right, where your camera's off. And so we've seen this happen last year where when people would come in, sometimes they were like, you know, my mind was telling me to just like not even come today, because what can I really offer to the space? I can't be fully present. And then when they came, we would really adjust, you know, depending on what was going on in the world and even just locally. Sometimes we would just hold space a little differently, right? So we try to respond to what's coming up. And we've seen that really supportive, where people are like, you know, I'm glad I came. I'm glad I came today. So just let us know if you're anticipating an absence, if you're going to be late, because you will be missed. There's stories, there's connections that you know, each person is co-creating the space with us. So we want you to wholeheartedly accept the invitation. If this year isn't the right time, you know, just really think about that for yourself, given the attendance piece. We've also historically gotten a lot of applications too. So just keep that in mind, that, you know, you taking a spot, somebody else we're deferring them to possibly a future time, right? So just wanted to really lay this out before you get into the application stage, but I'll hand it back over to you, Asandi.
Thank you again, Namira. And next, Dario is going to talk about what you can expect from us and our commitments to you all once you become a fellow. Dario, you're muted. You're still muted, Dario.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. My name is Dario Goodwin. I go by the pronoun she, her, they. I am a Black woman with red rim glasses with a big red and black afro. I am wearing a white linen sleeveless shirt, and I am in front of a bookcase that has a picture of most notably 3 gold circles. Namira has talked about what we could kind of expect from you. I'm gonna tell you what you could expect from us. You can expect for us to be real and transparent, and I can honestly say that there is nothing. Can you go watch TV? Grandma's in the middle of a presentation. Okay. Go get the remote.
And we also welcome real life. We welcome real life. This is real life. This is what happens. Okay.
Yes. Gary. Yes. And trust me, nothing can shock us and or make us not want to accept. We expect for you to read the room and hold the we read the room and hold the space on our own missteps. We will communicate, update changes and events in a timely fashion. There are a couple of places that you will get notifications. You will get monthly e-blast from Aisha, our communication specialist. You'll get updates through our evites. I will email you personally about different things. And we also have a Facebook page. So there's always an open line of communication. And we got a new email address to commemorate that. So don't be afraid to email us at Detroit Equity Action Lab. No, it's at deal@wayne.edu. We will be responsive and accessible. Even though my hours might say 9 to 2, you can always call or email at any given time, and we will try to be there for you, and we will be present and be respectful of your time, because 12 months is a lot to ask, and sometimes the sessions can go from 8 to 5. So we will be respectful. We do also commit and starting and ending on time. Like Namira said, communication is key. Give us updates to let us know if you'll be late, if you won't be showing up. It's also coming prepared. showing up is good, but you also need to kind of like interact. So we will interact and show up prepared for you. We uphold the cohort group agreements that we share, I think at the beginning of every session, don't we, Asandi?
Yes, they're co-created by the cohort.
Yeah. And we help to create your, you help to create your own fellowship experience. We do include feedback and your opinions on a regular basis. So we are always open.
Thank you, Darielle.
Oh, you're welcome.
So if you were not excited before, we hope you are more excited about applying, and we encourage you to apply soon. I'm going to talk about eligibility, what we look for in a fellow, and also a snapshot of our demographic data from the previous cohort, Deal 6. So who's eligible to apply? We accept emerging and experienced leaders who are deeply committed to racial equity. So I want to emphasize emerging and experienced. It is both that we welcome and encourage to apply to this fellowship opportunity. You heard, I believe it was Namira, talk about all identities are welcomed and backgrounds, and that we really strive to have a cohort that is reflective of Detroit's population. And you'll see some of that show up in the demographic data that I'll share about the Deal 6 cohort. In terms of where our fellows come from and the organizations and affiliations that they have, nonprofits, volunteer-based organizations, if you work in the public sector, and if you're an entrepreneur, you are encouraged and welcome to participate in this fellowship program. And we have had fellows, we have fellows in our alumni network who come from all of these spaces. There is no minimum budget or organizational size. So regardless of what the size of you may be at an organization that is all volunteer and you don't have a budget, that's okay too. Or you may be a 1 or 2 person size organization or a solopreneur, and that's fine as well. So there are no requirements around that. In terms of geography, we are seeking fellows who live or work in Detroit or the metropolitan area. Most of our fellows will be in the Detroit area, living and working in Detroit, but that's not the sole requirement. You will see also what's reflected in the data that we are now gathering is that most of our fellows do reside in Detroit. What we look for in a fellow. So these are some of the desired characteristics that we look for in a fellow. This helps us determine whether or not this is really going to be a good fit, a mutual good fit opportunity. So I talked about the commitment to racial equity. That's first and foremost. We also want fellows who are critical thinkers and who ask questions about the systems that govern us. In addition, fellows must be respectful and open to different ideas and perspectives, as well as honoring their voice while actively listening. We talked about how you will experience discomfort in this fellowship program, and that is often the space and the opportunity where you grow, and that's a beautiful thing. And we expect that to happen and want to be transparent so you know that will happen, and be okay with it. And you may not always agree with what someone else has said, and that's okay as well, but we will hold a space that is respectful and accepting of different and varying ideas. We also want fellows who will challenge the status quo and dominant narratives. For some fellows, and even I would say for staff, going through this fellowship experience repeatedly with you, there's some unlearning that needs to take place, which is why we talked about we will learn and grow alongside you. These are some additional characteristics that we look for. You got to be hopeful. If you're in this work, it can be challenging as hell and physically, emotionally exhausting. So you have to believe that you can positively influence racial equity in Detroit and beyond. Otherwise, and we presume you do, otherwise you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be interested in this opportunity. Having a demonstrated understanding and pursuit of racial equity, a desire to be a part of and fully participate in a learning community and network. And to reiterate what I said earlier, being willing to sit with discomfort is key. And here's some demographic data from our last cohort. I want to reiterate that this is a competitive process, and I'll repeat that again, but just so you can see here, we had 55 applications for the last cohort, and I am anticipating more than 55 applications for this round of cohort, this current upcoming cohort of fellows, because we're doing this info session, for example, we have a press release out, so our outreach and marketing have been elevated. We have space, as Namira said, for 30 fellows. You'll see here that as far as gender, our fellows are predominantly women. They are predominantly Black at 54%. Our age ranges, because we are multi-generational and multiracial, the fellowship age ranges from 18, and I don't believe we've had anyone that I know of that was under 21. But so typically early 20s to as mature as 64. 80% of the fellows reside in Detroit. However, we do have fellows from Hamtramck and surrounding the suburbs. So you see here, while 54% is not I think we're around 79, 80% Black in Detroit, but most of the fellows are Black and are Detroit residents. Why you ought to apply. If you need more encouragement about why you should submit this application before June 10th, it's the network, impact, and engage. So the network will give you an opportunity to participate in high quality skill building. That's what Namira talked about in terms of our curriculum and our themes. You will get to deepen relationships and join this network of dedicated leaders who are addressing structural racism across different sectors. We presume you are applying because you want to be impactful. This fellowship will help you gain a better understanding of the historical context shaping Detroit's racial inequality, which, whether you are aware of it or not, it is impacting the work that you do. So having that historical context is key. In addition, we'll add to your toolbox. We will literally give you a small toolkit at the start of the fellowship, and it serves as a metaphor, but you actually will have things that you will be able to pour into you to add to your broader toolbox, skills that will help you to be able to affect change and disrupt beliefs and be able to influence racial equity in policy. And the last part is engaging. You'll work together with other fellows in your cohort, and then after your fellowship experience, connecting with the broader DEAL network to define a mission for moving Detroit forward toward greater racial equity. You will engage through the monthly sessions and other opportunities and strategy sessions to plan a joint action. We will be activating the lab in 2023, the lab part of the Detroit Equity Action Lab. So that'll be very exciting. And finally, the opportunity to learn and experiment with new techniques. We will hold space for that within the fellowship, but also we anticipate that you will do that within your organizations and your communities. I wanted to quickly share some feedback that we've gotten from fellows about their experience. So these are little thought bubbles from a recent alumni survey that we did. Fellows talked about the value of having a shared access to a network of racial equity leaders. So that network, you will hear us talk about that a lot because it really is key. And it can make the difference from, I was saying, a project or a campaign that is struggling to really like skyrocketing with the support of other leaders that are part of this network that you may or may not know. Fellows also talked about the fellowship providing a valuable platform for reflection, which is also something that both Namira and Dario mentioned in terms of holding space. They said that their fellowship experience influenced the way that they think about and approach their work. It also has helped them to propose and or develop changes in racial equity and policy within their organizations. And then finally, we talked about this a moment ago, they acquired new tools that strengthen their skills to be able to do this work. And we believe that regardless of where you are in your experience level, that there's always something more and new to learn and ways to grow and become, to increase your own capacity, really. So the application process, what to expect, how we select fellows, and then what happens after your application is submitted. Again, competitive process, 55 applications. For last cohort, we anticipate more. What you should know is that in addition to some voluntary demographic information that we ask, there are 13 narrative questions on the application, and they are character limited. The responses are character limited. So we don't want you to just write for days and days. It's 200 characters. It's the limit per question, which is approximately 30 to 50 words, depending upon how verbose you are. Incomplete applications will not be reviewed, and I am confident that you will not even be able to submit an incomplete application. Or if you do submit an application with an incomplete answer, we will not review it. So be really thoughtful, be intentional, and we really want you to put forth this effort. To reiterate, if you are not certain about your capacity to commit to this and to show up every month, then consider deferring your application or deferring your application until next year. It really is okay. There will be a deal 8. It's not like this is a one and only opportunity. We'd rather you take the time to think about your commitment and your capacity to honor the commitment than join and not be able to finish. All right, selection, how we select our fellows. We have developed an evaluation criteria, which I'll talk about in a moment, but the folks that are going to review your application is a jury. We will have a jury that consists of the team, the staff that you've met, also alumni like Namira and other deal stakeholders who will review applications. Each application will receive at least 2 reviews. Depending upon the number of applications we receive, there may be 3, but at least 2 people will review every application. The application of those 13 questions, there are 5 weighted questions that we really will lean on, as well as consideration of your overall application to kind of help determine and help us assess your application and who moves forward. I talked about emerging and experienced leaders. We also value a formal and informal experience. So you may be a paid staff person within an organization, or you also may be a volunteer. We don't see, one is not more valuable than the other. We value both. So please don't underestimate the time that you're spending in the community if you're a volunteer. We care about that as well, and we want to hear about that. I talked about the weighted score for those 5 questions around our evaluation criteria. So we'll look at those scores to help us narrow down the first round of applicants. Know that the final decision about who is invited to participate in this fellowship is the staff. The evaluation criteria that we use are around these 4 categories: fellowship fit, behavioral and emotional intelligence, critical and systems thinking, and leadership development. So there are questions in each of these categories that you'll see on the application. After you submit the application, what happens next? The application opened yesterday. I also want to note that if you start the application and you get interrupted, or you need to come back to it, or you really want to ponder a response to a question, you can save it in the submittable platform. So it's not I have to sit down and do it all at one time. I don't believe that it will take you a long time, but you do need to be thoughtful about the questions. So the applications opened yesterday. They will be open for 3 weeks and close on Friday, June 10th at 11:59 p.m. So you literally have all day Friday to get that done. However, I encourage you not to wait to the last minute. Applicants will be notified in about 2 months in early August about whether or not they were accepted into the fellowship program. You will either receive a notification that is a decline and thanking you for the application, or a notification that is inviting you to join the fellowship. And then you will have, I believe it's about a week to accept our invitation. If you accept the invitation, then you will attend the 2-day orientation, which will be in person, pending any changes, which seems to be ebbing and flowing with COVID, in person September 8th and 9th. And we'll share the program calendar and the dates in August when we send out the invitation. So you'll know for the year what to expect from DEAL. And then finally, we'll wrap up the fellowship the following September in 2023 with a graduation celebration ceremony, which will also be in person. And as Namira mentioned, this fellowship cohort will be hybrid, so we will meet both in person and via Zoom. So we're going to wrap up with answering some frequently asked questions. And then if there are questions that you all have, we invite you to either share them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and you can ask those questions directly. Do I need my employer's permission to attend? If you are a part of an organization, we would hope and encourage you to have a conversation with your employer before you apply. Our expectation is that your employer will sponsor and be supportive of your time because you will be out of the office every month, and that they also will, in your conversations with them, will see the value of your participation and allow you to hold space to share what you're learning with others, with your colleagues. So no, you don't need their permission, but it is to your advantage to have it because we meet during the day. And so you will be out of the office. So we encourage you to have a conversation before you even apply. Is it a paid fellowship? And I also want to invite the rest of the team, if you all want to jump in and answer these questions, feel free. I do not need to do all the talking. Is it a paid fellowship? No. Do I have to pay to participate? No. And one of Dario's areas of expertise is around food and fellowship. So you come and we feed you. If we are meeting somewhere where parking is required, we will take care of your parking. What you need to bring and what it will cost you is your time, your energy, and your presence. Where does the fellowship take place? I mentioned for cohort 7, it will be a hybrid model. We will meet both in person across the city, including Wayne State's campus, as well as via Zoom. The Zoom days are shorter. The last cohort, I think they were 10 to 3, and I would imagine we'll probably do something similar. And the optional sessions, they may also be in person or virtual. Is attendance mandatory? Absolutely. We need you to be here. And we're stressing this because we've learned, there have been a number of lessons learned when we were not really clear about this. So you need to be here, one, because you're a part of the network. And when you're not here, your voice and your contribution to the conversation, your sharing and your learning does not take place. And fellows notice. It's not just the staff. Fellows notice when you're not there. And you are a valuable part of the cohort. So we need you there. However, we understand that life happens. It happens. Just communicate with us and let us know if you can't be there or if you're going to be late. I do want to be clear that, however, if you are absent, if there are more than 3 absences, you will no longer be a part of the fellowship program. So again, before you apply, think about your capacity and your time, your ability to make this commitment. Our last set of FAQs are, again, what if I'm absent? We encourage you, and beyond letting us know, I talked about the 3 absences. We anticipate with the orientation that you'll form relationships. There may even be folks in the cohort that you already know. So connect with them. For the in-person sessions, we will not record, but for the Zoom sessions, we will likely continue to record those. So there'll be an opportunity, and we'll share those recordings typically within a week after that monthly session. However, for the in-person sessions, reach out to someone else in the cohort and ask them, what did you miss? Perhaps they have notes. If there are documents that we shared in person, those will be available virtually. We make sure that we have a folder that we store, sort of really like a virtual library. But in-person sessions are not recorded. Talk to somebody. It's how you reach out to one of your fellow fellows and ask them about what you missed and ask them to debrief with you. It's also a great way to build relationships. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can add, like, historically, we've done like a buddy group kind of concept too, where you have at least one person that is your designated person where you can talk between sessions. But if you do miss something, or even if you just zoned out, right? We're like, wait, I missed what happened. You can go debrief with that person between sessions. So if you are absent for any reason, we also ask that you then take that initiative to reach out to your person, schedule the time. We sometimes have paired people up based on if they like phone conversations, if they hate phone conversations and want to do text or email, if they really like video calls or meeting in person. We've done a few different things, and each cohort has been very different around handling something like a buddy kind of pairing. But, that's something that we have historically used and has seemed to also help. So people are kind of knowing what's going on.
Thank you, Namira. I forgot about the buddy, completely forgot about that. Do I have to live in Detroit to apply? No, you can work and live in the metropolitan Detroit area. How can my organization support? So I talked to support the fellowship. I talked about, first of all, them supporting your participation is a huge start, and them allowing space for you to share what you learn. We are focused on increasing the capacity of the individual fellow. But again, the expectation is that you will share. You will share what you learn. We have also been, while this is not an expectation, we've also had fellows, had a fellow from the previous cohort who had such a great experience that she reached out to us on behalf of her organization to do some separate work in a deep dive. And so there are a number of ways that we can be supportive, but first have a conversation with your employer and get their buy-in, and having them support your time out of the office is going to be key. And perhaps there is an opportunity, if your organization has not participated in the fellowship before, this could be the opportunity to start a new relationship. And perhaps after your participation, there are colleagues that are interested based on your experience that want to apply for Deal 8. So those are just some of the ways that an organization can be supportive of you and the fellowship. If you need experience do you need experience to apply? And we talked about emerging and experienced leaders. So you need to come with some experience. This is not a space for someone who is brand new to racial equity. This is not the program for you. So you need to arrive with some, you've done some work. You need to show up with some receipts, I think is the younger people say. And then what happens after the fellowship? You've heard us repeatedly mention the network. You join this network of over 150 alumni, including Namira. And we are really excited because what's going to happen next year is the activation of the lab. So it's not just, oh, I'm a part of this cool alumni group, and they really are a dynamic group of leaders. You will have the opportunity to work together and co-create, collectively disrupt, pilot something, and we will be supportive of that network. So working together through the lab, but also perhaps your organizations collaborating. So there's a number of ways and opportunities for you to stay engaged, not just with your fellow fellows, but also with DEAL. And we may call on your expertise as an alumni to participate in monthly sessions. You could also in the future be asked to join the design team. There are a number of things that could happen, but we want you to stay engaged and be open to staying connected to us and your fellow fellows. So with that, I'm going to stop talking and ask if there are any questions that are in the chat, or if anyone wants to come off of mute and ask questions that perhaps we did not answer during our presentation. And if there are questions in the chat that I didn't see, please let me know.
There was a question about like the COVID guidelines for in-person sessions. And so I don't know, Darielle, do you have more information about the guidelines that Wayne State is using?
Yes. Well, it depends on if we will be on campus or off campus. There are two separate kind of like guidelines. Off campus, as long as our group is under, I want to say 50 to 100, as long as we're under 50, we don't have to require masks, but they are optional. We don't require vaccines, but we will be practicing social distancing. That aspect will be thought of when reserving space to make sure we have the capacity to social distance. Masks will be available, hand sanitizer. We'll have disinfectant spray that will spray down the area before, during, and after. If we're going to be on campus, there's a screener that will be sent out that is usually inside of the Evite. So you will have the information with each invite to let you know what to expect, because like I say, it'll be one extra step. If we're on campus, we'll have to do a daily screener. But if we're off campus, the daily screener isn't required, but social distancing, masks, and PPE equipment will be available.
Yeah, thanks, Darielle. I think the only thing I would add is like we had started at the beginning of the pandemic in person, right, before March, because the fellowship at that time started in February. And then once it started, we were really quick to switch to virtual. So I will say that, you know, based on kind of who's in the cohort and just the conversations, it's part of the community agreements, how we're setting the space together is talking about being in person. Since that time, like we had an in-person picnic that was on Belle Isle. It was outdoors, right? We were being really careful to make sure there was hand sanitizer and all of that. So for those kind of, we encourage people to kind of create that with us, like what is going to be that cohort's kind of guidelines? What are we thinking about for meeting in person?
We also acknowledge that things are changing. Things are changing right now with COVID. So we don't know. And we also will be mandated by the university. The university's policies and guidelines will inform whatever we're doing in September. And we also have to comply with the venues that we're at, because they may have a different set or competing policies or requirements around COVID. So we will take precaution, as was said earlier. I saw another question in the chat that I think I want to ask you, Namir. I want to put you on spot and ask you to respond to that question, because
I have great question.
Been here. Yeah, I haven't been here that long, so I think you are better equipped to respond to that.
That makes sense. Yeah, thanks, Asandi. I also wanted to shout out our team, because Asandi's a relatively new director, but has been amazing and really guiding us through the pandemic for this experience. So Asani, just a lot of sending a lot of love for it and gratitude for that. And then Dariel always like holding space, making sure we're fed, making sure that we have what we need. It's just really a pleasure to be in the spaces that they're in. So yeah, for this question around the changes, especially, it's been interesting, like from when I was a fellow, some feedback that we actually gave that year was that the facilitation team, the design team, was from out of state. And so we kind of reflected it back, a number of us, that we have people in Detroit, right, who are doing facilitation, who are holding space, who are doing this work around like leadership development. So how can we bring in more of that? And so the design team has changed over the past like few years as to who is sitting on the design team based on capacity. But we've really tweaked the arc of learning. So like I mentioned, we start with like a lot of the personal, ancestral kind of lineage, those pieces, going into some more around like affinity groups. The order of that has shifted based on feedback we've gotten. So we often work with Dr. Lindley Mendoza around autoethnobiography, and we've like played with the order of that as to what we saw was supportive for fellows. They were like, oh, this would have been really great to do first. So thinking about what goes first. The virtual space, like that has changed. So, you know, one of the years the sessions were a little bit shorter on Zoom. We were then able to adjust and like add a little bit of time so that after lunch it didn't feel like everything was happening so quickly. We could come back, we could settle. That has shifted. Some of the ways that we've done the caucus work, so we split into like affinity groups or caucus work for part of the fellowship, that has shifted. And so there's been like some curriculum pieces, but then also just the ways we're holding space with each other, what we're focusing on, what we're also naming for you all as expectation setting. That's been a shift over the years as well. And then Asani, do you want to talk about like the length of the fellowship program? Because that's a different shift too.
It is. And the curriculum that Namira mentioned, over the past maybe 6 or 9 months, we finalized the curriculum. So it's also been refined. It's very similar to what we did for Deal 6, but there are some shifts there. So we have like our curriculum, which we are very excited about, that's finalized. And going through that process, we realized that regardless of whether we're in person or virtual, that the fellowship year needed to be extended. We didn't want to shortchange fellows the experience and rush through content and the arc. We didn't want to rush through the arc. So we decided, after looking at the curriculum and what we thought made sense to really hone in on over like what we needed to talk about, we needed 12 months for that. So we extended it, I think it was 10 or 11 months. I can't remember what it was before, but it's a 1-year fellowship program now with the 13th month as the celebration, which I mentioned is in September 2023. On the not the program side, but on really the operations and admin side, we have changed our application process. And so for the first time, we are using Submittable, which is an online application platform. We have evaluation criteria for the first time. We have like a written attendance policy around expectations. So there's this clarity. So there's some things that we believe that are new that are going to make the experience more well-rounded, but also like providing the clarity and the guardrails that are needed to ensure that we are, that there's a good experience. We also are doing evaluation in a little bit of a different way. And I want to reiterate, I believe what Dariel talked about, like we gather data through monthly sessions, surveys, and those monthly session surveys are looked at every month, and we are in real time, as best as we can, pivoting and adjusting and being responsive to the feedback that we get. And so I think, I don't know that that's necessarily new, but I think the way that we're doing it is an evolution for sure.
Yeah, and I'll also mention, like, so I was part of Deal 3, so there was Deal 1 and 2 before that. Shane, who's also on the design team, was part of Deal 2, I think. Yes. We always have a little bit of competition, friendly competition around which deal cohort we're a part of. So some of the changes from there as well, like we brought back the caucus work or affinity group work from deal 2, because that actually started there. So we look back at like deals 1 and 2 as well. One big change that I would definitely want to mention is that Mama Lila Capel, who's one of the founders of the DEAL program, passed away, right? And so she, her kind of vision and the way that she was structuring some of the exercises we used, like the curriculum still retains some of that, and then we've built on it. So this curriculum really is like all of the DEAL cohorts have added something to the curriculum, whether it's a specific type of exercise or a specific type of activity. I know Teddy is on the call today. We made sure to add ASL interpreters every time from Teddy's cohort, and just really thinking about accessibility, accommodations, like what do people need, right? And how are the fellows really informing the space that we're creating? But Mama Lila, I think just the through line for a lot of what Mama Lila was doing with us was really focusing on individual kind of journeys and this kind of collaboration framework. So Tawana Petty sat on the design team. We really worked with her around the collaboration, like how are we getting there? How are we talking about it? In the past, when we were in person, we would do walking tours with Bob and Jaman Jordan, with Black Squirrel History tours, right? So just thinking about all of the different resources and assets that we have outside of just like time and money, right? It's like we have resources and elders and the wisdom that's in Detroit, the people who are in Detroit. How are we bringing that in? And Tawana, for example, has come in and done sessions on surveillance and racism, right? For example, that's been part of an optional session as well. So really just thinking about who is in the space and how we're bringing together different people. So it's not just like me and the design team facilitating every session. We will facilitate parts of them. And I think the other thing that's very consistent is our kind of opening circles. That's been something that we've been very mindful about since Mama Lila was really structuring the space, was having time every session to really check in and dive into some storytelling with each other and some questions and seeing how people are doing and what they're bringing into the space. We've had fellows who's have faced death in their families. Like there's just been so much that people are holding, and we want this space to be supportive and not just like, oh, I need to put on my game face when I come into the space. So that's been something that we've really tried to keep consistent throughout the experience.
Thanks, Amira. Are there any other questions anyone has? You want to come off of mute or type it in the chat?
My last thing, I'm talking a lot. Aisha has also been such a cool like support over the years. So with DEAL, like amplifying what individual fellows are doing, Aisha is really fantastic around those resources, making sure the network knows, and then also just being a communication support and specialist in the space too. So that's a change over the years as well.
Great. I'll hold for like another 10 seconds or so. We are okay with awkward silence in DEAL. We're okay with that. I see a question about the days and times. So the fellows will meet for monthly sessions on the second Thursday. The times will vary. In person, we'll probably I'll say from 8 to 5 or 8 to 5:30. Virtual, tentatively 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And also, while most sessions are one day, there are a few sessions starting with the orientation in September that are 2 days. So they will be both Thursday and Friday. And that first session, the orientation will be in person. So in-person days are longer. Virtual sessions via Zoom are shorter, around 5 hours.
I would like to add that for optional sessions, if we have them, they will be the 4th Thursday of the month and would probably still be within that time range, depending upon if it will be an in-person or a virtual session.
Thank you, Dario. I forgot to mention that. I appreciate that. There will also be other, outside of the monthly sessions, we also hold other events that are in the evening. So there'll be, Namira talked about the reunion, which you all would experience in the August of 23. But there also will be a meet and greet, other social in-person gatherings, and those take place in the evening. Any other questions?
Did we talk about the reunion? I'm really trying to remember now. I don't know if we did.
We didn't mention the reunion. You want to say something about it?
Sure. So that's something that's been really great, just opportunities for like Deal fellows from across cohorts to meet. And there's always been some level of a reunion. It's changed every year as to like when and where. So there is a reunion coming up up till Deal 6 this Thursday, I think, right?
I'm sorry, I was thinking about the reunion in August, but yes, we have a reorientation because I forgot who asked the question in the chat about like what has changed. There has been, as you heard in Namira's response, this evolution of the fellowship program. And so we realized that and wanted to update this network that may not know about all of the changes. So we'll be talking to them and convening them and bringing them together to hear about the changes, but also for them to fellowship with one another. Some of them, I would imagine, have never met each other. So we'll be holding space for them this Thursday in person. And we're excited about that. Is there anything else, team, that we missed that we might want to touch on? And are there any questions from anyone? We appreciate you all showing up, taking the time to listen. This was recorded, so you will have an opportunity if you want to revisit it before you submit your application. If you're not sure, all of the information that we've shared for the most part is on the website. Those FAQs are on the website. And again, revisit this recording. We hope to get it up within 24, 48 hours. It'll be on the website. We appreciate you coming. We'll also just hang around for another minute if there are questions that you all have. We really, really appreciate you showing up for our first ever info session. And just thank you for your presence and your questions. And we look forward to reviewing your applications. And please, if you were attending to learn, you showed up just to learn more, we also encourage you to share this opportunity with other folks that you think would be a great fit. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. And we'll pause for another 30 seconds or so, maybe 15. And if there's nothing else, then we will stop the recording and share it with you all on our website. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for showing up. Take care.